You know what's powerful. Acting like nothing affects you badly, not because you're numb, not because you don't care, but because you've decided you're done handing your power over to things that don't deserve it. Let's be real, life will hit you. People will disappoint you. Plans will fall apart. You'll get blindsided, heartbroken, underestimated. But here's the truth, you don't have to react to everything. Not every comment deserves your energy. Not every bad day needs to break you. Not every setback is a signal to stop. When you act like nothing affects you badly, you're not suppressing, you're choosing. You're choosing strength over drama, peace over chaos, clarity over confusion. You can't always control what life throws at you. People will say things, situations will blindside you, and disappointments will show up uninvited. That's a fact. But here's what most people never realize. Your real power isn't in trying to stop the world from being unfair. Your real power is in how you respond when it is. Your response is where your strength lies. It's the one thing you truly own. When everything around you feels out of control, your response is still yours. Fully yours. Most people give that power away far too easily. They let a rude comment from a stranger ruin their day. They let a missed opportunity define their worth. They let external circumstances decide their internal peace. And just like that, they hand over their energy, their joy, their control to something or someone that isn't even worth it. Why? Because they're waiting for life to be fair before they feel empowered, but life doesn't work that way. You don't take control by fixing everything around you. You take control by fixing how you deal with what's around you. It's not about pretending nothing happened. It's about choosing how you'll respond, no matter what happens. That's where real confidence starts, not the loud, showy kind, the quiet, grounded kind that says, I'm still in charge of me, no matter what you do. When you practice controlling your response, you start to shift everything. You stop living in reaction mode. You stop giving people buttons to push. You stop wasting time explaining yourself to people who don't even deserve front row seats in your life. That's not ego, that's discipline, that's emotional intelligence, and it's built one moment at a time. Imagine this, someone insults you. You feel the sting, the anger, the instinct to defend yourself or clap back. But instead you take a breath, you pause, you ask, is this worth my energy? You choose stillness. You choose to protect your peace instead of proving your point. That's not weakness, that's strength in its purest form. Choosing your response doesn't mean you won't feel pain, frustration, or disappointment. Of course, you will. You're human, but you get to decide what happens next. Do you spiral? Do you lash out? Or do you rise above it, not for them, but for you? That decision, that pause, is where your growth happens. And here's the best part. The more you do it, the easier it gets. You build mental muscle. You train yourself not to react out of habit, but to respond with intention. Over time, you become unshakable not because life gets easier, but because you get stronger. Most people think power is about controlling others. It's not. Power is about not letting others control you. When you realize that you're always one decision away from peace, one breath away from clarity, one pause away from power, everything changes. You start showing up differently, calmer, clearer, more focused. People can sense it. The world may not change, but how you experience it will. In that shift, that calm in the chaos, that's what makes you unstoppable. You're not here to react to everything. You're here to rise above it. You're not here to match energy. You're here to protect yours. And when you fully understand that your response is always in your hands, that's the moment you stop being a victim of your circumstances and start becoming the author of your life. Most people go through life reacting to everything, every word, every look, every opinion, every small inconvenience. It's like they're walking around with invisible strings attached to them, and anything or anyone can pull on those strings and control their mood, their focus, even their identity. And here's the truth most people don't want to face. If everything gets a reaction from you, you're not in control of your life, the world is. When you react to everything, you're essentially telling the world, "You get to decide how I feel." That's a dangerous way to live. You wake up in a good mood, then someone cuts you off in traffic, and suddenly you're spiraling. You were excited about a goal, then someone criticizes your idea, and now you're doubting yourself. You were making progress, then someone ignored your message, and now you're questioning your worth. That's not empowerment, that's emotional chaos. Letting everything affect you keeps you in a state of constant distraction. Your energy gets spread too thin. Instead of focusing on your purpose, your priorities, and your progress, you're caught up in what people think, what they said, how they looked at you, or what didn't go your way. It's like trying to run a race while stopping to argue with every spectator in the stands. You'll never get anywhere. You'll just exhaust yourself. The truth is, not everything deserves a reaction. In fact, most things don't. Most comments are projections. Most criticism says more about the speaker than it does about you. Most inconveniences are temporary. And most people aren't even thinking about you as much as you think they are. But when you react to all of it, you make it bigger than it is. You give it space in your mind. You give it power. You have to ask yourself, is this helping me or draining me? Because every reaction costs you something, your time, your focus, your peace. And that's a steep price to pay for things that don't even matter in the long run. If you want to grow, if you want to build something meaningful, you have to protect your energy like it's sacred, because it is. People will test you. Life will throw curveballs. There will always be something trying to pull you off track. But maturity is learning how to not engage with everything. It's learning to breathe before you speak, to observe before you act, to walk away before you explode. It's not suppression, it's selection. You're not ignoring the noise, you're just choosing not to dance with it. When you stop reacting to everything, you take back control. You start moving with intention instead of impulse. You start focusing on what matters, your mindset, your goals, your peace, your growth, and people notice. There's a calm strength in someone who doesn't flinch at every blow, who doesn't rise to every bait, who doesn't need to prove themselves through arguments or overreactions. You become the kind of person who moves with purpose, not because nothing touches you, but because you've trained yourself to respond only to what matters. You understand the difference between reacting and responding. Reacting is impulsive, emotional, automatic. Responding is deliberate, grounded, powerful. It's not that you don't care. It's that you've outgrown the need to show up for every petty thing that tries to get your attention. You've got a mission now. You've got bigger things to deal with, and that shift from reacting to choosing is the beginning of a new level of personal freedom. You're not here to react. You're here to lead your own life, and that starts by deciding what's truly worth your energy. Everything else, let it pass, let it go, let it be noise you no longer answer to. Real strength doesn't always look like what you think it does. It's not loud, it's not aggressive, it's not about shouting back or proving a point. Real strength is stillness. It's calm. It's the ability to sit in the middle of chaos and not flinch. It's standing in a storm and refusing to be shaken, not because the storm isn't real, but because you've made a decision to stay centered no matter what. When everything around you is loud, your silence becomes your power. When everyone else is panicking, rushing, reacting, you become the steady one. The grounded one, the one who sees clearly, and that clarity comes from stillness, from learning how to slow down your mind even when the world is speeding up. But stillness is a skill. It's not something you're born with, it's something you develop. You practice it when someone disrespects you, and instead of firing back, you breathe. You practice it when plans fall apart, and instead of spiraling, you pause. You practice it when life feels uncertain, and instead of reaching for control, you reach for peace. That's how stillness becomes your superpower, through repeated, intentional choices. Stillness is not the absence of emotion. It's the mastery of it. You still feel, you still care, you still get hurt, disappointed, or frustrated. But you don't let those emotions lead. You let them pass through without giving them control. And in doing so, you gain something that most people never do: emotional freedom. When you're still, you're not suppressing, you're observing, you're listening, you're watching the situation from above instead of being pulled under by it. And that shift gives you space, space to think, space to choose, space to respond instead of react. That space is everything. It gives you the ability to say, "This doesn't need my energy right now," or "This isn't worth breaking my peace." That's not weakness. That's wisdom. Think about the strongest people you've seen, the ones you truly admire. They don't panic. They don't beg for attention. They don't scramble for validation. They move with presence. They make people lean in, not by how loud they are, but by how grounded they are. That's the energy you create when you build stillness into your life. That's the power of not rushing to speak, not reacting to every trigger, not allowing everything to shake your spirit. Stillness helps you stay aligned with your values. When you're still, you remember what really matters. You stop chasing temporary wins. You stop needing to be right in every conversation. You stop exhausting yourself trying to change things you can't control. You start living from the inside out instead of the outside in. And here's the truth: the world will test you. People will misunderstand you. They'll try to provoke you. Life will throw pressure, deadlines, noise, drama. But your job is not to absorb all of it. Your job is to protect your inner state. Your job is to stay rooted. Your job is to remain in the driver's seat of your emotions, even when everything else tries to grab the wheel. Stillness is a silent declaration that you are in control of you, that no matter how fast things move, you don't have to move with them, that no matter how loud things get, you can still hear your own voice, and that no matter how uncertain life becomes, your foundation stays firm because you've built it from within. This kind of strength doesn't make noise. It doesn't need to. It speaks through your presence, through your patience, through the way you carry yourself when everything around you tries to make you fall apart. Stillness is not passive. It's powerful. It's not doing nothing. It's doing the hardest thing, choosing peace when chaos is available. That's the strength that can't be faked, forced, or fabricated. That's the strength that makes you unstoppable. Emotions are powerful. They rise fast, they hit hard, and they often arrive without warning. But here's the thing most people never learn: emotions are not commands. They are signals, messages from within, and they are meant to inform you, not control you. And until you understand that, your life will be ruled by every emotional wave that comes your way. When you feel anger, frustration, jealousy, sadness, anxiety, those emotions are trying to tell you something. Maybe you've been wronged. Maybe you're afraid of being left behind. Maybe something's out of alignment. Those feelings are valid, but they are not a green light to lash out, shut down, quit, or act impulsively. That's where people get it wrong. They feel something uncomfortable, and they immediately assume they have to do something about it. So they speak without thinking. They make decisions they later regret. They spiral into stories that aren't even true. But what if you paused instead? What if, in that moment of emotional heat, you said to yourself, "This feeling is not the boss of me. It's just trying to show me something." That pause is where growth begins. That pause is where emotional intelligence is born. You stop being reactive and you start becoming aware. The reality is, emotions pass. That anxiety you feel in the middle of the night, it's not permanent. That anger that flares up when someone cuts you off or criticizes you, it'll fade, that wave of sadness. It'll shift. Emotions are like weather, they move through you, and just like you don't plan your life around a single storm, you shouldn't plan your life around a temporary feeling. But if you don't recognize that emotions are temporary messengers, you'll end up building your future around your worst days. So, what do you do with your emotions if you don't act on them right away? You listen, you sit with them. You ask, "What is this trying to tell me?" You treat them with curiosity instead of judgment, and from that place of self-awareness, you get to decide what happens next. That's the difference between reacting and responding. Reacting is driven by emotion, responding is guided by awareness. When you respond, you acknowledge how you feel without letting it hijack your choices. You stay grounded even when your emotions want to pull you into the chaos. That's not easy, especially if you've spent most of your life believing that feeling something strongly means you must act on it immediately. But it's one of the most important skills you'll ever build. This doesn't mean you suppress your emotions or pretend they don't exist. It means you create space between the feeling and the action, and in that space you find wisdom, you find clarity, you find the version of yourself that isn't driven by impulse, but by intention. Think about it. How many times have you said something in anger that you didn't really mean? How many times have you made a decision in fear that kept you small? How many moments have you sabotaged because you mistook a temporary emotion for a permanent truth? Emotions are not facts. Just because you feel like a failure doesn't mean you are one. Just because you feel rejected doesn't mean you're unworthy. Just because you feel stuck doesn't mean you are. But if you obey those emotions without pausing, you start living a life based on illusions. When you learn to sit with your feelings instead of acting on them immediately, you gain a kind of emotional freedom that most people never reach. You become someone who can experience the full range of emotion, from pain to joy to fear to excitement, without being dominated by any of it. You stay in the driver's seat. You stay aligned with who you really are, not just who you are in a single heated moment. Emotions are guides, not gods. They are here to teach you, not to rule you. The more you learn to feel without obeying, the stronger and wiser you become. Silence is one of the most misunderstood forms of power. People often think silence means weakness, avoidance, or indifference. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Silence is not about shutting down, it's about rising above. It's about refusing to be pulled into energy that doesn't serve your peace. It's about choosing strategy over impulse, presence over noise, and clarity over chaos. You don't always need to explain yourself. You don't always need to defend your name. You don't always need to respond to every criticism, comment, or insult. That's exhausting, and more importantly, it's not effective. What is effective? Discipline, restraint. The ability to pause, the ability to walk away, not because you're weak, but because your energy is too expensive for foolishness. Think about it. How many arguments could you have avoided if you had just stayed silent? How many situations got worse because you tried to prove a point to someone who was never going to listen in the first place? Not every conversation is worth having. Not every person deserves access to your thoughts. And not every battle is yours to fight. Silence is not passive. It's intentional. It's what allows you to observe without being reactive. It's what creates space between stimulus and response. In that space, you gain control, you gain leverage, you gain wisdom. Silence lets you see things clearly because you're not busy reacting. You're watching, you're learning, you're deciding how to move with purpose, not emotion. The loudest person in the room is rarely the most powerful. In fact, it's often the quietest one who holds the most strength, because they don't need to prove themselves. They don't need to be seen to feel valuable. They don't need constant validation to feel worthy. That kind of person makes others lean in. They don't demand attention, their presence commands it. And here's something powerful: silence can't be misquoted. You can twist someone's words, but you can't twist silence. When you choose not to engage in drama, gossip, or petty arguments, you protect your peace and your reputation. You show people that you are emotionally mature enough to stay calm under pressure. That kind of calm is magnetic. It draws respect. It builds trust. It gives you credibility, not because you talked the most, but because you knew when to say nothing. People often underestimate how strategic silence can be. In relationships, silence can be a boundary. In conflict, silence can be a reset. In negotiations, silence can be power. You don't always have to fill the space. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is pause and wait. Wait for truth to reveal itself. Wait for emotions to settle. Wait for clarity to come. Silence also teaches you self-control. When you practice holding your tongue, especially when everything in you wants to speak, you're developing a kind of inner discipline that pays off in every area of your life. You start making decisions based on your values, not your emotions. You start showing up with intention, not reaction. You start protecting your mind like it's sacred, because it is. Most people live in a state of constant noise, social media, arguments, opinions, news, drama. And then they wonder why they feel anxious, exhausted, and lost. Silence is the antidote. It's the space where healing begins, where clarity forms, where purpose is remembered. It's not empty. It's full of answers you can't hear when you're busy talking, defending, or reacting. Silence doesn't mean you're backing down. It means you're tuning in to yourself, to your values, to your truth. And in a world that constantly demands your reaction, your silence becomes a rare and powerful statement. I choose peace. I choose power. I choose me. There's a difference between being cold and being focused, and most people confuse the two. When you stop responding to every distraction, stop explaining yourself to people who don't understand you, and stop engaging with things that drain you, people might say you've changed. They might call you distant, cold, or selfish, but the truth is, you haven't turned cold. You've simply learned how to protect your energy and prioritize your growth. This is what happens when you step into a season of self-respect. You stop trying to please everyone. You stop overextending yourself just to make other people comfortable. You stop being available to things that don't align with your values, your vision, or your peace. That's not being cold. That's emotional maturity. That's clarity. That's power. You're not ignoring people because you don't care. You're being intentional about where your attention goes. You've realized that not everything deserves a reaction, not every conversation needs a response, and not every person deserves access to your inner world. You've stopped running around trying to prove your worth to people who never truly valued you. Instead, you've started proving it to yourself through your boundaries, your focus, and your discipline. When you make a decision to focus, to truly go all in on your purpose, distractions lose their grip on you. You're no longer swayed by every opinion, every invitation, every impulse. You become laser, sharp with your time, your energy, and your circle. And yes, it can feel lonely at first. but it's a powerful kind of lonely one that leads to breakthroughs, clarity, and alignment. A lot of people don't understand this version of you. They're used to the you who overgave, who overexplained, who always showed up for others at the expense of yourself. But that version of you was tired, scattered, and stretched thin. This version of you, the one who protects their peace, guards their time, and stays focused. This version is grounded. This version is dangerous in the best way. Being focused doesn't mean you're closed off emotionally. It means you're selective about where your emotions go. You understand that energy is currency. Just like you wouldn't hand your money to just anyone, you don't hand your focus, your trust, or your presence to just anyone either. You've worked too hard to build your peace. You're not trading it for temporary approval. And when you carry yourself with that level of self-respect, you start attracting people and opportunities that match your energy. People who value depth over drama, conversations that build instead of drain, environments that challenge you instead of distract you. But none of that happens until you stop trying to be everything to everyone and start becoming everything to yourself. This kind of focus isn't always glamorous. It requires saying no to things that look good but aren't good for you. It requires walking away from people who once felt familiar but no longer feel aligned. It requires discipline on days when motivation is nowhere to be found. But every time you choose focus over distraction, purpose over comfort, and peace over approval, you get closer to the life you're meant to live. People might say you've changed, and they're right, you've evolved. You've grown out of the version of yourself that tolerated too much and expected too little. You've stepped into a space where you no longer beg for clarity or chase after people. You simply align with what you know is meant for you, and you let go of what's not. So no, you're not cold, you're focused, you're healing, you're growing, and for the first time, you're finally putting yourself at the center of your own life. That's not selfish, that's necessary,